David Cameron will deliver a very important speech today and tell us that the cuts his government will have to make will affect our whole way of life. So let me make a modest prediction. An awful lot of people will be much more interested in what his more junior ministers will have to say about rubbish bins. That's already affecting their lives, and they don't like it. What we're allowed to put in them and what we're not, whether we'll be forced to pay a bin tax if we get it wrong, or bin too much, whether the whole recycling thing is getting a bit out of hand. This lady, Samantha Kelly, lives in Newcastle under Lyme, where they're pretty hot on it. She showed her bins to Bob Walker, all of them.
The grey non-recyclable bin, just put anything in there that you can't recycle. And then I've got me cardboard bag. And then I've got me blue box, which is for tins and glass. Me blue bag for paper. And then I've got the red bag for bottles, plastic bottles. And then food recycling.
And the next one?
And then the grey one is for the kitchen, food. And then it's my textiles bag for...
Any clothing?
Any clothing to recycle, yeah.
So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I think. And then there's one that you're going to get at some point to make it up to 9.
The brown garden bin.
So what will the new government do about Mrs. Kelly's bins? Well, we know what they won't do. They've dumped the bins tax the last government was planning for England, which will please a lot of people. But something has to be done about household rubbish, and a lot of attention is being paid to a scheme in Windsor and Maidenhead. Liam Maxwell is a Conservative councillor there.
The system works by having a new bin which has a chip in it, and the bin is weighed every week, and the amount of recycling that you put into that bin is rewarded with points. The more you recycle, the more points you get. You can earn over about £130 a year in rewards, which are mostly with local businesses, for instance, local restaurants and also local shops. We trialled it for the last 6 months, over 6,000 houses, and the increase in recycling was marked. And we tested it once against people who were using the scheme and people who weren't, and we saw a 35% increase in recycling.
Well, very good. The bin has a chip, weighed every week. People benefit, but it's also the kind of thing that bothers people who worry about government intruding into every area of our lives. Alex Deane is from the organisation Big Brother Watch.
I'm really opposed to this because I think it's a stalking horse for pay-as-you-throw in the long term, and also because I think it's deeply intrusive in privacy terms. To anyone concerned about privacy, this government's giving with one hand and taking away with the other, getting rid of pay-as-you-throw, which they announced this weekend, at the same time as they introduce this technology which has exactly the same capacity to record your waste habits. My fear is, in the long term, this smiling face of environmentalism is really a mask for exactly the same technology being used to charge us for pay-as-we-throw.
Well, Gary Porter is the chairman of the Environment Board at the Local Government Association. Good morning to you.
Good morning, John.
Let's deal with those worries first. It's a stalking horse for pay-as-you-throw.
Absolutely not.
Because?
Absolutely not. The gentleman you've just spoken to must be quite paranoid about it.
Well, perhaps he's right to be. Just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you, as they say.
Yeah. This is purely an incentivised scheme where people are rewarded for participating in recycling. It's one of those schemes that councils up and down the country are looking at to try and divert as much as we can from landfill.
But it does mean that there is an element of intrusion. I mean, if you've got a chip in your bins, people do know quite a lot about the way you lead your life. It tells them quite a bit, doesn't it?
No, it doesn't. It just tells them how much recycling you put in your recycling bin. Doesn't tell them any more information than that. And those people who are participating in Windsor and Maidenhead have chosen to do so. It's a completely voluntary scheme.
Tells you, well, at the moment, yeah. Tells you how much tells people how much you use, what your sort of consumption is, doesn't it? It gives them some idea.
No, we already know from the figures that we have to compile from government each month exactly what figures we already produce in terms of tonnages going to landfill and tonnages going to recycling. This just tells it for the amount of recycling per household.
Right. Well, now, if everybody, if a couple of obvious questions arise. One is, if it's such a good idea, why aren't all local authorities doing it?
This has been introduced about 6 months ago, and I'm sure local authorities up and down the country are looking at it with interest to see how it rolls out. It's only been a partial pilot for 6,000 properties. I'm sure once we've got full sets of data for it, there'll be more councils taking it up.
How many more do you think? How many are showing an interest?
I wouldn't be able to give you a figure on how many at the moment. We're always interested in looking at ways of reducing the amount of rubbish that we send to landfill. 2 reasons. One, we're running out of landfill space, and secondly, we're using your money to pay for it. Government currently taxes at £48 a tonne for putting rubbish into a hole in the ground, and that will go up to £80 a tonne by 2014, and that's your money. And
so
we need to do what we can to save it.
Yeah, but on the other hand, you're paying out, we were just hearing there from Liam Maxwell, more than £130 to some families. Well, that's a lot of money, isn't it?
The £135 it is, I think they get there. This is the maximum they'll be able to get, and that's not us paying it out. That's the private sector playing with us doing it. There's 106 local companies.
Well, hang on, sorry. When you say it's private sector doing it, somebody has to buy the tokens or whatever it is that you then cash in at your local business.
There's 106 local businesses and Marks and Spencers who are sponsoring this scheme.
So not a penny comes from the taxpayer, from the council taxpayer?
I wouldn't swear that not a penny does. You'd need to talk to them specifically about that. There's going to be administration costs and such like out of it.
But what you are saying is that M&S or whoever happens to be sponsoring this, they're the people who pay, who provide the vouchers in return for the recyclable rubbish, which you can then use in their shops.
That's my understanding of the Windsor scheme, yes.
Yeah, well, I mean, you'd have to know, wouldn't you? If you think it's a good idea, you'd need to have a bit more than an understanding. I mean, I wonder how closely you have looked at this.
Personally, I haven't looked at it overly closely, other than it's another scheme.
Shouldn't you? I mean, you chair the Environment Board.
But it's not my job to dictate to other councils what they should do. I share a general interest in what councils are doing to reduce the amount that goes to landfill. I don't have to have a full working knowledge of it.
Well, I don't know. I just thought perhaps you would if you were chairing the board at the LGA. But anyway, so go on.
Well, I'm sitting in one of your studios in Norfolk. Can you tell me what's in this studio?
No, I've got the first idea. I imagine there's a microphone, though, because I couldn't hear you otherwise, and a pair of headphones for you to listen to me on. But I'm not sure that's quite the same thing. But anyway.
Well, you know it works.
I know it works. All right, yeah, but I mean, you can't be sure this is going to work unless it's looked at very carefully. The point I'm making
I agree with you. I can't be sure it'll work. But we do need to look at it, and we need to look at every other opportunity that we get for diverting landfill waste. Right. We can't keep on throwing rubbish in holes in the ground. The government
take that point. So tell me what happens then, as far as you understand it, to the stuff that is recycled. I mean, is it recycled so that it is reused in a sense that we can understand it? Actually, the cardboard or whatever it is turned into paper and that sort of stuff.
It is. All of the products that go through recycling are used to be recycled in one shape, way, or form or another. Last year, when there was complaints about the prices internationally falling for plastics, I had a meeting with Coca-Cola, and they couldn't get enough good quality recyclable plastic to make their bottles. We've had the same sort of meeting with them about aluminium. We can't get enough recycled material into the system. So it's important that everybody takes as much of that out as possible because there's a demand for it.
Because every so often we see pictures, don't we, of warehouses full of bales of paper or whatever it happens to be, with apparently no market for it.
That's not correct. I mean,
that's stopped. Well, it used to be. I don't know whether it is still the case.
It does look like it, but with all commodities, people buy them in, store them up, and then sell them to the market when the price is the best thing for it. We see that in scrap yards. We've got scrap metal in yards for years and years and years before it gets sold to somewhere else. That's the way people who are dealing commodities work.
So do you reckon that, and I understand that it's not your responsibility to decide what other councils do, but do you think it's possible that over the next, year, let's say, councils across England, and maybe Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland will follow suit as well, or are doing their own thing, do you reckon they will all be doing something like this? And that the days of punitive measures to make us recycle are completely gone?
No, I don't think everybody will be doing it, and I hope that the days of punitive measures are gone. I don't think anybody likes to force people to do things. I think most of us like to try and educate people why we need to do things and how it's in their best long-term interest to do it. I'd be interested myself to see it. I haven't got any plans in my own council to roll out a scheme like this just yet.
You haven't?
But if it takes off and it works really well, I'm sure myself and other colleagues will be looking at it to roll it out further.
Gary Porter, I beg your pardon, go on, finish your point.
Well, we don't all want to learn the same mistakes. We're waiting to see what Windsor and Maidenhead's plans deliver and what mistakes they make so that we can not repeat them for future schemes.
Gary Porter, many thanks.